Hi everybody! I heard your feedback that you wanted to see more videos, and so what I'm decided to do in lieu of replying in the discussion post, I am going to post a video of my thoughts. So that way over the next 3 weeks you're at least getting one video from me. And so thank you. I want to say thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate it. I do enjoy hearing what I can do to make this class better, and so please continue to send your feedback to me so I can incorporate that the last half of the class. So it has been a really interesting week in Minneapolis, and so I live in Minneapolis and I work in Minneapolis. So I work at the MEC building where you had most of your classes, and I live in an area of Minneapolis called North Minneapolis. And so I am about I live about 3 miles north of MEC, and we are considered a predominantly Black community. And so I think seeing how community members have responded, and also seeing some of the nearby damage that's been done to businesses has been quite humbling, to be quite honest with you. And it's been a moment of great reflection for me and my family on what we think about all this, what we think about race, what we think as me, as somebody who identifies as white, what my role is in this. I'm also parenting 2 Black boys. My boys joined our family through adoption, and they identify as Black. And thinking through what do I say to them, and how do we talk about it as a family? And so it's been a quite heavy week. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I realize with you having been here for a year, being familiar with Minneapolis, seeing it, but not being here right now, let me know how I can help answer questions. And there are a lot of questions, and I think that there's a lot that we're still watching and waiting to see what's going to happen in regards to how we move forward with law enforcement charges, how this case proceeds forward, if there are any type of changes to our laws and regulations, since that governs our police department and how our police department responds to citizens. And so I think for myself and for a lot of people, this is bringing up a lot of questions around what do we think the role of police is in our community. What do we think about protests and riots and looting, and where is I feel like that has been an ongoing discussion in our community, and one that I think will continue. And in the United States Constitution, a lot of this is around our First Amendment, which is a freedom of free speech. And so when does protesting, and when does that become a crime? And I think we talk a lot about that in our community. So I'm always happy to talk about that with you. I know it's really complicated. Your conversation for this week, the discussion question is focused on global diversity. This is one that I intentionally added to our class because I acknowledge that the issues of diversity and inclusion that you're experiencing in your workplaces right now, or in your communities, can feel very different than what the United States is experiencing. And so I really wanted to dig in and talk through this. So I think at a very high level, what type of company makes a difference? And what I mean by that is, in the United States, I have worked for a single company, that was based largely in the United States, and so that was Target Corporation. I worked in their headquarters. And so when we talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, they were very much rooted in Western culture, in the United States legislation, in the culture of the U.S. and in some cases we did need to think about other countries. We have a large there was a large employee group in India, for example, and so when we talked about what mattered and how we were measuring it, it was very much based on our laws. So in the United States, when you start a job, you are asked your race, you are asked your gender, you're asked your age, and you are asked if you have any disabilities. Now, those 4 measurements are federal requirements. We have federal laws that tie back to those. And so large companies over 50 people, are required to report to the federal government on how they're recruiting, retaining, interviewing job applicants, etc., under these measurable categories that employees are self-identifying at the time of hire. Now, because of that, sometimes this measurement and what we value has, right, what gets measured gets done, or what gets measured has value. Lots of companies start there. They start with these federal regulations, and they start with the federal requirements. Then I moved to a different company called Cargill, and they're a global company. There are as many, if not more, people working outside of the United States than they are within. And that was a very different plan for diversity and inclusion. And in fact, this is a company that, instead of saying, it's like some companies have D&I for diversity and inclusion, they were very clear that they're inclusion and diversity. And a lot of that was around, they wanted to ensure that this Western view, or this Western idea of what equality looks like, actually wasn't. I'm trying to think of just the right words to say it. That's actually not the belief that everybody has, and this idea that Western is right or Western is the bar, isn't truth. And that might make sense in some countries, and it might make sense in other countries, but it's really up to individual locations for themselves to decide, what does equality mean? What does inclusion mean, look like in our area? So here's an example of one that I experienced at Cargill. What does equality look like for the LGBT community? So this is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender plus community. And I think in the United States, we talk about this in one way, or in Western countries, we talk about this in one specific way. Now, what does this look like, for example, when we're talking about LGBT rights in Taiwan? It's a Western view to oversimplify the issue and say everybody needs to be like us in the United States, where our company is headquartered. That's actually not that's actually not helpful in a lot of situations, because there are different laws in different countries, different regions, different parts of the world. There's different privacy issues. So there are several countries in the world where you cannot ask somebody how they identify. You cannot keep a record of their gender, for example. There's also different beliefs, and I mean this both from a religious and from cultural. And when we talk about LGBT, I want to be very clear that we're talking about a lot of issues. So we have lesbian, gay, or homosexuals, but then we also have transgender individuals. And depending on the country, depending on context, those feel like two very distinct issues, depending on the country and depending on the culture. And so as a company is making a plan, so when I worked at Cargill, we needed to make a plan for what did LGBT equality look like globally. We had several different plans underneath that. We had a plan based by country, by region, by belief. And that wasn't created by folks who are based in the United States. That was actually created by people who are based in and live and work in the countries. And And so it felt very authentic, and it felt very representative of the area versus me sitting in the United States making a plan for my peers in Japan, for example. Because of that, because I needed to have that cultural humility to be able to say, not, I don't know the answer here. I don't know the culture. I don't understand the nuances. But there are people that do and that care about this work. And so how do we engage a network of people to do this globally? And so I'm curious about your thoughts. I'm curious about your current work experiences. I'm curious about what you observed when you were in Minnesota and the United States. I'm curious what you think about how Western values and Western ideals impact what you're seeing. And if you think that's good or bad or indifferent, I'm excited to hear from you. And so I hope you have a lovely week. And please don't hesitate to connect with me if you need anything as you're writing your case study or filling out your discussion post. I try to be available, and I also do check my email at hours that I know are convenient for you. So if you email me, I try to get back to you right away so you're not having to wait for the time difference. Okay, everyone, I think I've talked long enough. I hope that you have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.